Do you want lower GPU temperatures? Do you want longer, cooler gaming sessions? Then replacing the thermal paste on your GPU may be the solution to your problem. So stick around because that's exactly what we're doing in today's video. Let's jump into it. But if this is your first time to the channel and you're into building and fixing up gaming PCs on a budget, consider clicking the subscribe button and notification bell to catch all new uploads the moment they drop. Doing this helps me grow here on YouTube and as a content creator. And for that, I appreciate you all to the moon and back. What's happening, YouTube and the internet? Terrence here, and we're back inside the lab. And today, we're taking a look at a GPU I deemed worthy here in late 2019, the now 6-year-old R9 280X. And now when benchmarking and overclocking this GPU, I couldn't help but notice that the temperatures were just a little too high for my liking. And this was more so concerning because the setup was on an open air test bed, the Lee T60B. And with the R9 280X being just over 7 years old now, I think it's time we swap out the thermal paste, the material between the GPU core and the heat spreader, and see if we can get this GPU running faster and cooler, also seeing if we can push that overclock a little bit more as well. But first, tell me down in the comment section below if you're rocking an older GPU like the R9 280X. Also, tap the like button for me while you're down there as well. And now with that out the way, let's tear down this GPU and get that thermal paste swapped out. All right, and we're back. See, we have the heat sink off and removed. It's a little old and crusty, and these are thermal pads, which I'm gonna try to leave on and not replace because I don't have any extra ones laying around. And then the thermal paste, as you can see here on the PCB. So this is the GPU core right here. This is where all the magic happens. This is where all the video rendering takes place. The thermal paste, really thin and really dry and crusty. This isn't what we want. This is what I suspected in the first place when I was looking at the temperatures of this GPU. First step, let's go ahead, clean the thermal paste off. Then I'm gonna go ahead and clean the cooler shroud here, fan, and get some new thermal paste put on there. And so now we have the thermal paste cleaned up off the GPU core. So that's all of the old thermal paste remove off of there. It's not perfect, but it's clear. You can see the core there. And what I'm going to do with the cooler is I'm actually going to spray it. I'm going to take the thermal pads off and try to salvage them because, again, I don't have any spare thermal pads laying around. So I'm going to remove these just kind of gently without tearing them. See, and where'd it go? And try to preserve these thermal pads. And then I'm going to spray the cooler down with some ECC electrical cleaner. Alright, and so now we have the coolers all cleaned off and looking really snippy. Sprayed it down with some ECC to remove all the gunk and I guess debris that might have been still inside of the radiator fins here that could obstruct airflow to the GPU core, which is also tuned now all nice and clean. So now what I'm going to do is apply our thermal paste, which is some Arctic MX4 thermal compound. You can put a lot on the GPU, won't really hurt it. This is also too non-conductive thermal paste, so it won't damage the PCB around the core right here and the little pins that surround the core. And there you have it. GPU is back together. 1, 2, 3, 4 screws are back down. GPU's looking good. Now for the test, the reason why we are all here, and that's to see if replacing the GPU thermal paste has or will help with the GPU temperatures. Let's find out. And there you have it. The process went over smooth and everything went well and as expected. Once again, do me a solid and tap that like button for me in the name of all things budget. And now let's take a look to see how big of a difference the thermal paste swap made in some of our before and after comparisons. And as you can see here, starting with the Furmark benchmark, we saw an average GPU temperature of 64 to 69 C before the thermal paste swap, and then 61 C after the thermal paste swap. And then in Firestrike, we saw the GPU temperatures reach a maximum of 68 C before the thermal paste swap, and then 63 degrees C after the thermal paste swap. And then I ran an hour loop of heaven on the Ultra preset with anti-aliasing set to 4 times and tessellation set to moderate. And the results were a max temperature of 68 C before the thermal paste swap and then 63 C afterwards. The thermal swap didn't do much for our overclock, which was upsetting. I will keep it 100 there. But at first I tried another plus 10 on top of our previous overclock on the core and plus 5 on the memory. But still no dice, heaven still crashed. I was unable to get it stable at those settings. So then I dialed back the core speed to where I knew it was stable before and dropped the memory down to 1445 megahertz and still no dice, it still wouldn't pass. I even upped the fan speed to 80%, leaving the core speed the same, but bumping the memory back up to 1445 megahertz and heaven still crashed. And so then what I tried next was I dropped the memory down to 1440 megahertz, left the core speed and the fan speed alone, and was finally able to get a pass in heaven, scoring an average of 48 frames per second. And then for one last all or nothing overclock, I dialed in plus 15 on the core and plus 10 on top of the memory. But once again, my efforts were left unrewarded as heaven crashed yet again, leading me to believe that I have reached this graphics card's overclocking limits. I generally had a great time with this card, from benchmarking to running some games, and I'll throw a link up to that card right here so you can see where it all started. From my first cracks at overclocking this GPU, which I'll also throw a link up to that video as well, because I had a blast shooting that video, and there will definitely be more overclocking stuff in the future. And now, was it worth it? I will honestly say yes, and that's especially because given how easy it was to take apart the R9 280X. It was simply 4 screws, and then 2, how easy it was to replace the thermal paste. I was hoping for better overclocks and lower temperatures, but it is winter here on the East Coast, and the ambient room temperature in my testing area is generally set anywhere between 70 and 71 degrees C. So tell me down in the comment section below if that's something you would like for me to revisit in the future. And to learn more about budget PCs and other gaming related stuff, watch the top video first and then the bottom one next. Consider clicking the round subscribe button right there on the screen and come back for more PC gaming and other tech related content. Anyhow, that'll be all for this one. Thanks for giving it a watch. I hope to catch you all in the next one, so until then, be easy.